There we go.
Okay, great. I am so sorry for that. Um, as Waldo said, we're all going to talk about our challenges supporting our universities during the pandemic and beyond. We each have 5 minutes, so if I talk really fast, that's probably why. Trying to get it all in. Our initial challenges, of course, and this was even prior last winter, a year ago winter, before the shelter-in-place order came down, was what were we going to do to help our staff and faculty, and what kind of technology equipment did they need? Specifically hardware, but of course it evolved into more than that. We found we had a lot of staff and students without available technology to work from home. We really discouraged them using their home computers because we felt like that they were maybe not as secure or patched or had antivirus on them. So we wanted to get ESU protected patched laptops into the hands of our staff. A lot of our staff and students didn't have sufficient internet. So we were hurriedly getting checkout laptops and getting laptops from all across campus, and IT was the main point of contact for getting those checkout laptops and hotspots into the hands of the people that needed them the most. We also had many courses that were not on Canvas or LMS, or they were just partially on Canvas. So our learning technologies team, headed up by Rob Gibson, developed quick boot camps, and they worked really hard, and we got all of our courses online in a big hurry. We also had to train our staff to work from home, how to be secure, why to be secure. Many of them didn't know what a VPN was or how to use a VPN. So we had that training involved to do really fast. And of course, we had the challenge of how we're going to answer the phone and keep things running when nobody's on campus. So we used Jabber to develop a process for people to answer their phones from home. And of course, I think all the universities were tasked with this, but these were challenges for us especially. I think our biggest challenge, though, was all the information that everybody needed in a short amount of time. How do we get that information into the hands of our staff and students? There were lots and lots of questions. We don't have enough people at the help desk to answer all the phone calls that we were getting for how do I do this? What can I do about that? And so we built a site. Our web and digital team, headed by Brian Osborne, built several sites. And one of them, of course, was our main COVID-19 information page. And as you can see on the left, there was the basic information about what to do. And of course, this was a little bit different when we actually rolled this out last spring than it is now, because we've evolved it over time. There's still COVID-19 out there. But one of the biggest things that we tried to do, in part to our students, was how are we going to do this? You need to be able to learn anywhere, teach anywhere, or work from anywhere. And so we built these pages for that. If you were an employee or a faculty member and you wanted to teach or work from anywhere, you would click on that link, brings you to another quick page here. And these are just screenshots of our pages. As you can see, the breadcrumbs across the top, you can go back and forth to any of these. But Teach Anywhere, our faculty needed to know, how do I get started? I haven't used Canvas fully. I've got to be able to get this information out there quickly. Where am I going to find that information? How do I contact our learning technologies team? And is there someone else in my department that already knows how to do this? Maybe they can help me. So we built this page for our faculty in mind. If you were a staff member, you would click the Work Anywhere link, and we provided a checklist for our staff to start with. There were other, of course, tiles that you can't see on that page, but we want to go through the checklist. Do you have what you need in the way of computer? Do you have internet? How are you going to answer your phone? If you haven't been using Teams already, which we do use here at the university, how do you use Teams? How do you use Zoom? A lot of them have never used Zoom. They're used to just talking across the office to their coworkers, not having to reach out to them with Teams or Zoom. Do you need to be secure? And if so, how do you do that? So we built these pages so that they had targeted information for what they needed to do their jobs. For our students, they could go to the Learn Anywhere link, and it would cover everything from how to take exams, what do I need in my computer, and we also developed a checklist for them as well. How to use Skylab, which is our online lab environment. How do they get Microsoft Office if they did not already have it, if they were counting on the lab computers to use Office. How to use Zoom, things like that. So these are also evolving as we move forward, and will continue to change and be updated as we need them to be. Moving forward, because my time's almost up, believe it or not, we also developed a bookings page. So we're using Microsoft Bookings, and this came about after we'd been at home for a while. But as we started thinking about coming back last summer, how do we allow people to come on campus to take care of something at the business office or to get help from the help desk, et cetera. So we use this bookings to let people make appointments. And I'm happy to say a lot of our departments, as you can see, our CSI, our sororities and fraternities are using it. Different departments across campus are using it to minimize the number of people in an office at any given time. We've also provisioned Zoom Pro accounts for all of our students. We're moving employee desktops to a laptop dock environment so that they will have the mobility and the agility to go back to work from home if need be. And we've extended our checkout pool to allow more long-term checkout for our students, where before it was limited. So I apologize, but that's going to be all from ESU so that I have met my time commitment, and I'm going to turn it over to Fort Hays. Michael?
Okay, let me unmute first. There we go. And I will share my screen. All right, can you all see my screen? I will take that as a yes. Okay, so I'm Michael Neese, the Enterprise Technology Support Director at Fort Hays, and we are, I'm the Director of Tiger Tech, which of course is basically the help desk part of a bigger technology services department. So I'm going to start a little different here. I got a quote. Let me click slide. I have a quote from a very wise Kansas man. Plans are worthless, but planning is everything. So there is a very great distinction because when you are planning for an emergency, you must start with this one thing. The very definition of emergency is that it is unexpected. Therefore, it is not going to happen the way it's planning. So shoot forward now to March 2020, and here's another quote from another wise Kansas man. We don't know what the heck is going to happen, so let's wing it until we flatten the curve. So y'all remember that, flattening the curve, 15 days, right? Yeah, we took care of that, didn't we? So here's what happened at Fort Hays. Prior to going home in March 2020, we procured about 100 laptops. Most of these came from our carts from around campus. We had no initial plans to send them out to any students, so it was mainly for staff. We also issued monitors to select administrative staff. We had people calling us and saying, hey, can I take my monitor home? And for starters, we said, no, you know what? We have a bunch of monitors from an old lab here, so let's give you one of these. So I think we saved a lot of people ripping their stuff out of their office and taking it home. And of course, like other universities, we all prepared our how to work remotely documentation. Our stuff is still out there, of course, it's good stuff. And that helped out quite a bit. Other things we did is we set up our labs for VDI, or no, we don't have much VDI. So we set up our labs for remote access. And, you know, you're limited to the number of seats that you have in a lab. So, but our demand did not exceed our resources. So it was basically two different departments that wanted that. No, there's three total, geosciences and applied tech. So we set that up with them so that they could allow students to remote into our labs. That worked out pretty good. And along with that, we also had staff that only had desktops in their office. They did not have laptops. So these were the folks that we checked out laptops to. And we had to enable remote desktop on their desktops for them. We don't have that on by default. And of course, we forced them to use the VPN. And we did have to help them get that going. But that worked out pretty good for them because then they had their old computer that they were used to. And it wasn't such a shock to them to have to work from a laptop. Other things that happened, of course, like all of you, we enabled Adobe Creative Cloud for students and sent emails out for that. That program worked quite nicely. Another big thing that we did was modify our main campus line. So we moved it to a menu system to try to catch registrar's office, student fiscal services, financial aid, those kind of ones. And there were still a bunch of, I think 3 of the choices actually came back to us. Another thing we did is we reduced our support hours to basically regular business hours. The main reason for that is actually the next point, where instead of using tier 1 students to answer our phones, we had 4 of our full-time, 4 ladies from the rest of tech services volunteer to take over the phones. So the easiest way for us to move to remote for our main phone lines was to physically take our phones home, or to have these 4 ladies take the phones home and plug them in. And that worked out really well, except there, of course, there's only 4 of them. So we couldn't, we had 12 students. So we sent all of our students home. All of our students went home and got paid anyways. It was a little unfair for us to have some work and some not. So that was a solution that we did. So, and Michelle was our tier 1 coordinator, and she trained all those ladies on that. And that actually worked out pretty good for us. Some other things we did was we bought more Zoom licenses that included some HIPAA compliance stuff and some webinar versions. A lot of that was for our TILT group to help support the faculty and staff. And of course, we utilized Teams we have for quite a while, and we set up special Teams chat groups. The ladies that were taking care of the tier 1, they had their own little internal chat group where Michelle could help answer a lot of their questions. Or there was also another, what we called a high priority group, which actually had like 23 people in it. And they would ping questions off of that group, and somebody would volunteer and answer. And that worked out really well. And then of course, the other thing is we, all of us tech people have to set up our work at home stations. So here's mine. I got my dual monitors there. I got my webcam, my USB headset, so I don't bother the dog, spare laptop. And of course, I was running this all off of an old Dell Precision workstation that I had laying around. So, so here's what happened at Fort Hays. Well, we survived. We flattened the curve, and we didn't actually run into anything that we couldn't handle. It all worked out pretty well. We really did miss our student workers. The full-timers that took over tier 1 figured out that it kind of interfered with their regular jobs. And they were quite happy when we started to have some student workers come back and help with that. Our tier 2 guys, at that time, we technically only had 2 tier 2 fellows, but they did have some other help from our AV guys, from network people that literally were not allowed to go into buildings, at that time. They did help with that. But they also, they were pretty swamped at the beginning, getting these remote users up and running and teaching them how to do that and all that stuff. We ended up checking out less than 50 laptops, and some of them actually did go to students. The students had to have prior permission from student affairs. And funny story, we actually haven't gotten one back. That student went AWOL, and we're not sure what we're going to do about that yet. But so one of the hiccups that we had was, and this kind of relates to what Melanie said, the getting users to use their soft phones at home was kind of a pain. Everybody forgot their passwords, so Sarah had to go and reset their passwords. It turns out that the soft phone licenses were not assigned automatically to everybody, so Jordan at Telecom had to get those licenses assigned. And then of course, nobody wanted to read the documentation we had. We have really good documentation on all that, even videos and stuff, but nobody wanted to do that. So our tier 2 guys had to help them get the clients going. So that was something that we don't normally do. That was totally added to our tier 2 folks. Here, learn how to do this and do it for a whole bunch of people. So we did have to take that on quick. So our tier 2 students came back June 1st of 2020, and it would have been really nice if we had card access across the university. We were working on that. They've added a few more buildings, but at that time we had to go all the buildings were locked. So we had to go let our students in just for them to show up to work. If they had to meet with somebody else in their office, that was a pain, because now they had to meet at the front door and somebody had to let them in. And we had to pass keys around. So, and then the other thing, I want to give a shout out to our Teaching Innovation and Learning Technologies group. They're the ones that help the faculty with the Zoom and move to, remote teaching. They had a heads up already because they had been working with all our China folks, because, the virus started there. And so they had already been heavily involved in moving to remote work, and those guys did a bang up job. I can tell. I don't work with them directly, but I heard that, and we also didn't take very many calls, if any, calls from faculty about, hey, how do I do Zoom? They had so many resources out there. Everything worked. I also want to give a quick shout out to Waldo for putting together this panel, and I will let him take it over from here.
Hey, Waldo, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Waldo, we can definitely not hear you. You are unmuted in Zoom, but muted somewhere else.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. I got a headset that's got an extra button on it. I didn't notice it. Okay, so for phase one, we were initially in the Hale Library for only a day or two when we were told to basically go home. So we had to quickly switch over to 100% remote support via phone, email, and Bumgar through Zoom. We did work off a way that we could use continue to use our students, and so we did that. Myself and Fred Darkow basically had to do manual phone assigning to the individual cell phones or personal phones of the students. And from there, we were able to use 2 remote cell phones also as a backup.
What we were able to do after the initial shutdown in March 2020, we were able to keep up 100% phone support using our students and forwarding the lines to them. We kept up, of course, 100% email support, so we were still able to answer all of those questions for customers. Zoom video was also available the entire time. And with Bumgar, we were able to do remote chat and remote viewing and assistance for our customers. So none of that was interrupted, which was very helpful. And at the very beginning of the shutdown, we used live Zoom session throughout the entire day. So that way our consultants and full-time staff could discuss things back and forth and actually talk about the issues that we got from the customers.
Now we moved to a phase 2 where we continue to try to improve things during the pandemic. We work with telecom, and a shout out to Danny, who is in charge of the telecom group, him and his technicians went in and installed, upgraded our phones to a new Avaya class phones and software. We also transitioned all of our operations over to Microsoft Teams for video communication and for working together. And also for assisting faculty and staff with internet needs. So the new phones allowed us to log in directly to the phones at the office at the help desk. So the phones were just here and the students would log in using the Avaya software, just like if they were here. They were able to use USB headsets in their computers, so that got them off of using their personal cell phones. And the Microsoft Teams transition with sub channels allowed them to interact more easily with each other and with full-time staff. We set up specific Zoom channels for visual verification of support. And sometimes we had students that did not have particularly great internet connections. So we were able to issue out mobile hotspots and wrap units to them to use.
This is a shot of the new phones that we were able to get. The nice thing is these phones are voice over IP, so they're already transmitting the data on the network, which made it a lot easier for us to forward these things to our students. On the right-hand side is the Avaya software. And with this software, it had all of the functions of the phones, and you just had to sign in to the extension that you were assigned, which we did in our scheduler. So the students would know as they came onto work, which extension do they need to be in, and they can sign into it and start taking phone calls right away. It was very, very smooth once we got to this point.
And this is a picture of our Microsoft Teams session, which was running full time when the help desk was open. We could chat in amongst each other and send chat messages or talk directly with video or share screens. We set up the, over on the right, you'll see the multi-channels, which allowed us to have meetings. We also trained a complete group of 8 consultants during the summer to replace losses for our tier 1 staff. And we use our teams to do all of this training in.
Teams also gave us area because we have storage locations for files, etc. It allowed us to go ahead and start creating inside of our help desk channel a lot of documentation, reference materials, training materials, and all sorts of files that would be related to our day-to-day operations. So we're continuing to use this as we move forward as a repository for new information from our IT partners that long-term we'll have to use as reference materials.
Phase 3, of course, is when we finally did get back in Hale Library on a limited basis and students were being allowed on campus again for smaller classes. The partial return to campus, we had to establish walk-in support areas. That meant that we had to get COVID protection up and then social distancing in place to protect our staff. We also limited the number of staff as far as student staff at the help desk to only 2 students. The desktop support areas also were set up with shielding with social distancing of 6 feet. We provided gloves and PPE material for the consultants to use to clean always. We also had isolation rooms, 1 per staff, for cases where we had students who were on campus and who didn't want to go all the way home to do their phone support. They could come into these isolation rooms and close the door and work from there. We also established some 2-way switching devices, which allowed us to use the headsets to go between the phone and the computer so we could do all of our Teams work and our phone interactions with users easily by just simply pushing 1 button. And we also had full-time staff rotating in on a limited basis. We usually had 1 person on site to support the students who are working here in Hale. And our augmentation remote support, of course, continued just as before with no changes.
So on the left-hand side, we're seeing a walk-up station. You can't quite see it. It's very clear, but next to the post, we have a shield. So it's between our customer and our students. And then on the right-hand side, we have socially distanced signage, of course, 6 feet apart. So that way, when people were coming up to get help, we actually made sure that we weren't too close to them and vice versa to protect them both ways. It was very nice to be able to have that with Hale Library.
And of course, our desktop support stations for desktop computer support and repair. We established these support stations with shields. There are some signs stuck on them. You can see more detail, closer one on the right, where a user would sit on one side, enter the information about their support requirements on the laptop in front of them. And then the consultant would use another laptop on the other side, and then they simply could pass their laptop to the consultant who was wearing gloves and a mask and everything like that for us to do the work on the machine.
And here's an example on the left-hand side. We had 3 rooms. If you notice, our extension is up there on top, so the student would know which extension to use as they came into the room. Each of the areas had an all-in-one computer as well as an extra monitor, so that way they could use all their tools easily. And the phone was the phone that we showed earlier on the right-hand side there. Again, the voice over IP connection and the switch where you can press 1 for headphone to talk to somebody on the phone and 1 going to the computer so we could talk with somebody and ask questions in MS Teams. So it was really a lot easier for the students because they could flip back and forth manually with a simple press the button. It was very helpful.
PPE protection, we use a simple expedient method of just using cellophane wrap to wrap the keyboard and the mice. This allowed us to clean the items regularly. All of the students adapted a clean-in policy at the help desk where we use PPE and disinfectant material to clean keyboards and mice and surfaces and desk surfaces whenever they came into work. We also participated in a regular cleaning support for the InfoCommons machines throughout the library that common users use. Even though we had the machines isolated off and only certain machines active, we would go around and clean those on a regular basis.
The outcomes that we had with these processes, 100% support was able to be maintained with no loss in the support hours. Using distance students initially allowed us to keep 4 and 5 students in the extensions while we were all totally away from Hale. We did improve the remote support with the phone system upgrades, which were great. Once we did the limited face-to-face, we continued the full COVID protection and social distancing. Everybody wore masks. Everybody cleaned in when they came in to make sure that we weren't exposing one another. Staff exposure and infection protocols were followed, and we maintained distance and limited full-time staff in office. And then support from managers and between staff, from managers to staff through MS Teams, which is still continuing live as we speak. Then the augmented remote support with BombGuard continued, and we were able to get internet access for faculty and staff without internet by using the hotspots as needed.
And that concludes our presentation, and we will pass it over to Fort Hays State.
Nope, I already did mine. Let's see.
I think it's KU.
I'm sorry, KU, sorry.
It takes a Zoom village. We're good.
All right, assuming everyone can see my screen. Cool, cool. All right, those who don't know me, I'm Jake Kaufman. I'm the Director of Support Services at KUIT. My teams oversee our main help desk, desktop support, cross campus, and classroom support. So without, let's go ahead and just jump right in since we only have a little bit of time here. So I broke mine out into kind of the immediate, the medium term, and the long term as far as the response to the pandemic. So immediately, when we saw this coming down the pike was, ensuring that my IT technicians can support their users remotely. So that means them actually taking all their equipment home, making sure they have their headsets, their computer, they have adequate Wi-Fi, all those things are taken care of so that they could be able to support all their users remotely. We also prep the users take their equipment home as well. So ensuring that they had all the necessary connectivity, the monitors, all that stuff, that they had the ability to take that home and set it up again. Creating websites, similar to kind of what others have discussed as well, that discuss functionality and teaching. So it went as far as here's how you plug an HDMI cable to here's how you run a Zoom meeting. And ensuring our remote help desk protocols were working as intended. Namely, we're Skype, Teams, Zoom shop. Our main help desk hotlines are already in the cloud. So they had no problems going home and logging in through the soft clients and handling phone calls. Same with my desktop technicians, able to do the exact same thing as well. And in planning during this time, we're doing the hotspot procurement and deployment. We're planning out expanding our VPN licensing. We're planning expanding out our virtual lab licensing. So obviously with campus shutting down, students can get access to those physical labs. Classroom equipment purchase, trying to get ahead of the supply chain there, and laptop loaner program. So both for staff, faculty, and student. So the medium term, so we did stand up, our expanded VPN solution. We were positioned for only part of people being off campus in that realm. So we had to be able to support the majority of campus being on VPN. So we had to expand that. We stood up our expanded virtual lab solution. So we did some interesting things there, essentially leveraging Citrix licensing, expanding that Citrix licensing, installing Citrix clients on the endpoints in our physical labs and presenting them through Citrix. So using our same virtual lab platform, just in a different fashion. Track and deploy the hotspots, track and deploy all the learner equipment, and then procure in-demand classroom equipment. So, obviously the supply chain and the time frame that we're looking at, and we knew that we weren't going to have a holistic setup for the fall semester. So getting ahead of the curve and getting in front of the line and procuring that stuff up front, ensuring that we could actually support some semblance of in-person learning, in the fall was important. So also we've had plans for a laptop procurement for remote and hybrid, so a more larger purchase. I'll get into that a little bit later. Plans for in-person classroom, again, going back to what I was planning to talk about earlier with procuring stuff before we kind of even knew that we were going to be attempting to do in-person classes in the fall. And plans for remote equipment for hybrid and in-person classes. So this is going from miscellaneous microscopes that need to be presented remotely, to a myriad of other pieces of equipment that we needed for to support those kind of lab and teaching environments. So long-term retreat. So we did, and what by say quote unquote long-term, I mean, we're looking at a couple months into the pandemic on executing some of these things and planning. So we procured, tracked, and deployed approximately 700 laptops. So initially we're looking at a lot of the units that took their desktops home, outfitting them with a laptop. Procure, track, deploy all the classroom equipment, all the miscellaneous lab and learning equipment as well. And for the long-term plan, the retreat. And again, this is kind of thinking more towards this past spring and what we were going to do. So purchase, schedule, plan, classroom upgrade. So approximately 60 classrooms that we upgraded for this past spring semester. Plan for the new virtual lab platform, which we did move to this spring. So we moved off Citrix and moved most of everybody to Windows virtual desktops. And then the plan for on-campus support presence. So where previously where it's kind of like on demand of staff coming to campus to do exchanges of equipment and doing those sorts of things, looking forward into not only this semester, but into we come to the fall semester when we're going to have one more of a normal semester of what that kind of looks like and ensuring that we have a presence on campus. And I believe that is all I had.
Was KU Med next, or?
Yeah, KU Med was next.
Okay, we'll move
Okay.
on to Washburn.
Yep, I saw that. Thank you. I did not do a slide deck here towards the end
Share,
of the
John, I can
panel.
share just a little,
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
There you go,
There
continue.
you go. Yeah.
It's us. Yeah.
My time here is done.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is John Haverty. I also have Eric Crouch and Eric Cross on here. Slide list there. Basically, we did a lot of the things that have already been mentioned. Luckily, we were like KU already on Skype for Business, so that was fairly easy to get the campus up to speed on that. Of course, our main thing that I know a lot of schools struggled with was procurement of items, headsets, webcams, all that stuff that they needed at home in order to do whatever to connect with the campus and their students and other faculty staff. So that was quite the struggle to go through that. But we did finally get that, but had some people that wanted to forward their desk phone to their cell phone. We tried to discourage that and have them use the soft client on their cell phone or through their computer at home. So we did have quite a few faculty staff that had desktop computers. So we had to check out laptops to them. We did, I think, less than 100 of those all told to the campus, but we allowed the entire campus, whether they're using their own computer, laptop, we checked out to them as long as they got on the VPNs. We had to do campus training sessions. We did lots of training there leading up to it, showed them how they can remote into their office computers so they have all the same programs, all the same icons, everything that they had everywhere else. So that worked very well. We did do laptop checkout to students, as I know many of the other campuses did. Some things we did to try and help with those people that did have laptops, the laptops that we had checked out. Initially, when we first went into the COVID lockdown, those computers weren't able to get updates. So if they were off, they kept them at home. They weren't bringing them into campus, as you would imagine. They were not getting updates. Towards the later part of COVID, we rolled out where they could actually get those updates through the internet. Got that working. That was actually just this last spring, I believe, or fall.
Yeah, well, while we were locked down, that was one of my main projects. Was we were reliant on WSUS, and that meant getting people on VPN or they didn't get updates. And so one of my responsibilities is Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. A back burner project suddenly became very important. We needed to get these systems patched. We needed to get them updated. As we all recall, Zoom, those universities and schools that use Zoom, they had so many software updates. And several of our users, faculty, staff, are uncomfortable doing their own updates to even software. So we were having to push these updates out. Hey, get on the VPN. I know you don't need to get to the shared drives or your home directory, but please get on the VPN. So it was very important that we got that spun up. And that was one of the things that we did along with many other things.
Right. The other thing that was kind of involved in that, which again, we already had plans to do, and that was VDI for the campus. Going into lockdown, of course, took that to the most important thing to get up and running. And that was, that basically got up just as people were starting to go home. The lockdown was happening. We got that working and still have it working to this day. So it's something that wasn't in the works, but definitely escalated the need for it, and still use it for faculty, staff, and student access from home. So
yeah, our VDI, I'm sorry, John, our VDI infrastructure as it was actually a proof of concept, and it suddenly, again, like getting computers patched, became a major need. We ended up purchasing additional licenses we're using VMware Horizon. We ended up buying graphics cards, NVIDIA grade graphics cards, so we could deliver ArcGIS and AutoCAD and other, even to a certain extent, we had people doing Adobe Premiere in mass media classes on our servers. It actually worked pretty well. We didn't know how well live video production would work, but when we did have people using it, they were actually pretty impressed that a remote system could be that smooth. There was some lag here and there, of course, but yeah, VDI was so new, and that's another thing that I actually do here at Washburn. I maintain all the user-facing systems and all the images, and I learned very quickly how fast, how useful VDI can be. Hopefully we can extend its use further. We won't need to necessarily buy so many more powerful computers in labs. We can deliver ArcGIS and AutoCAD virtually, which will actually save us money.
right. Let's see. Eric Carlson, do you have anything else to point out?
Nope, you're muted. Dang it, I messed that up. Well, anyway,
He's right over there, he's muted.
I accidentally advanced my one PowerPoint slide, so enjoy this black slide for now. A couple things that I would add to sort of just highlight some of that. The one thing that I thought was an innovative solution was how we enabled RDP for everybody. It wasn't just that was something that was always off, but we opened it for everybody, but it was based on Active Directory OU group. So like someone from science couldn't just RDP, it was restricted to their department because of how we have Active Directory structured. So I thought that was a really quick way because of some the previous structure, how we could limit access to just systems that they would need access to. Classroom stuff, we won't dive into too much, but it was the same as everybody else, struggling to get equipment, struggling to install it, webcams everywhere, USB extensions hanging everywhere. But I'll talk a shameless plug. I'll talk about some of our creative solutions tomorrow in my 3D printing
Right.
session. But no, I think overall we weathered the storm fairly well because of some projects that were in the works, and because of that VoIP Skype for Business piece, it was pretty easy to just show a user how to use the soft client or even the very garbage Android application. So I think that's all.
Telephones were pretty much good. I mean, again, either Skype for Business or if anybody has migrated to Teams, it's very useful. Any voice over IP system would have been very helpful, but ours, we had it for a few years already, and it just, most people just went, oh, you just signed in here? Yeah, okay.
Yep, biggest RDP, Zoom, Skype probably hiccup is people would try to RDP into their office desktop and then use Zoom from their office desktop.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would work okay, but if they didn't have a great connection there, what?
and they're trying to, the particular user group that would try to do something like that, it's really a hard concept to differentiate. This is your desktop, this is your work desktop,
Right.
That was a lot of the support that what we did. I think was that in the beginning.
Yeah, right. And as Eric said, the other Eric over there, many of our back burner projects, like I said before, just became so urgent, and this is probably the same for everyone, all universities, all businesses, everyone. This is something new that was. None of us in our lifetimes have ever experienced anything like this. And this is a unique technology problem that I hope everyone learned something and how we can deliver solutions for our customers.
Yep.
I really like to try and be the friendliest we possibly can, not say, no, you must do it this way. And I think with all these technologies we have here at Washburn and everywhere, we can do that. Zoom, Teams, Waldo mentioned BombGuard. That's another great tool. We use an endpoint configuration manager, and we just say, please go on the VPN, or if that's not possible, we were using Zoom.
Right.
So with endpoint configuration manager, it's just now that it's 100% set up for updates and patches, you know, I just tell people, turn your computer on, leave it on for a few hours, you'll get a restart prompt, and you're good.
Yeah. And with that, we'll go ahead and finish up here and hand it over to Wichita. I saw Waldo say 4 minutes left.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry if we went on. But
Thank you.
I hate to cut in. We don't have any questions so far, so I'll just let Wichita State go in. But if we do have questions, I'll just read those aloud after Wichita presents.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. I believe that we only have 2 minutes left, if I'm correct. So we're going to do it as fast as possible. So again, if you guys, we're going fast and you don't catch up with us, is recording and we will share our screens. Do you guys see my screen? Good, perfect. My name is Shadita Farroji. I'm working with the client services, and I have my team members, Melissa Hawkins from Help Desk and Ross Powell from Desktop Support joining me on this presentation. We will have I'm going to go with Help Desk regarding the support in the communication channel.
Yes, we had soft phones from the start, so we were very fortunate to go ahead and plug our students in. It allowed us to mirror the phones like many of the rest of you. So it provided a seamless support structure for our users.
And for the desktop support, we had the EC500 call routing, which allowed us to mirror our desk phones that would forward to the technician's cell phones. The great thing about the EC500 is that our cell phone numbers were masked. And if we called from our cell phones, the end user didn't end up getting the technician's cell phones. That was kind of a security issue. It always looked like we were calling from a desk.
Our initial shutdown, we had a week prior to spring break, so they had 2 weeks for the faculty to try to set up PCs remotely, to access online curriculum, to implement VPN. We expanded Microsoft Teams across campus to be able to communicate, much like Skype for Business is the time that transitioned off, and for users to learn Zoom. And then we also worked with other areas with our applications training team to update our website to have all the helpful tips and tricks. We bumped up our student hours, 40 hours a week during that time period. And from that point on, all support was remote for the help desk.
For desktop, from the initial shutdown, we were 100% remote, except we only had one staff member working full time in the beginning. That way we had some kind of presence here on campus. Kind of in the mid-pandemic, we split up into 2 teams. We had a blue team and a gray team, and half the staff was on campus and half the staff was remote, alternating weeks being in the office. That way, if somebody did end up catching the virus, we didn't have the whole team shut down. We could just switch teams. Thankfully, that never happened. We were able to just maintain the alternation of the 2 teams there. But we still had our full team working 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, so there was no change in total support hours.
As I said initially, we were 100% remote with phones, emails, Teams, and we used the app Remote Help for screen connection to users to be able to have assistance mid-pandemic. We started having 1 staff person on campus half day, and we required appointments through an app called Calendly. We required masks, we had gloves to work on computers and phones, and use an ultraviolet wand for sanitizing equipment as well.
For desktop, right at the initial part of the shutdown, again, we had 1 staff member working in the office. That way they could answer the door and handle anything that needed hands-on touch. We also had masks, especially when we're answering the door. We had close contact with clients, and like the help desk, we had the ultraviolet wand, sanitizing wipes. We were cleaning the bench. We were cleaning customer equipment. and all of that. And again, we were rotating staff bi-weekly. Every other week we would switch off. One team would be on, one team would be remote. We had some dedicated backup staff for our asset folks doing loaner laptop checkout and Chromebook checkout for faculty and staff and for students.
For help desk, we provided additional training for the students, the help desk students, to assist with the new normal support requests using the remote help app. Our training team provided step-by-step guidelines, and we had that available on our websites where a user could go anytime, any day to be able to have helpful tools to have remote access.
And the desktop support team, again, we also had remote help using Screen Connect, also like the help desk, to provide that remote support for folks that we were working with. Once Microsoft Teams was in greater use, that screen sharing option from Teams gave us another option to, just added another tool to our toolbox.
Our internet access, we have the same as the other schools. We provide some hotspots and some laptops for students and faculty staff. We purchased around 200 Wi-Fi's for the staff, the first come, first serve. 40% of the faculty, we divided that. 40% of faculty will have the Wi-Fi and the 60% for students. The Wi-Fi offer is still valid till 2021. Also, we purchased the 200 laptops for faculties and some students that needs to work on, especially with the Windows machine, and 200 Chromebooks. We approximately loan out 100 Chromebooks and 150 laptops out so far. The request for these loaning devices come through our ticketing system, Team Dynamics. They have to sign a disclosure that the disclaimer that we received it, and when they return it, they still sign it that they return it back to us exactly the way that they received it.
Internet security, this was a big concern for everybody. Obviously, as everybody's working remotely, we've got to make sure that we're adhering to compliance and regulations. Our baseline device image, we had Sophos endpoints as our security system for the baseline image for the machines. We implemented the Palo Alto Global Protect VPN. We transitioned away from the old Cisco AnyConnect right about the time the pandemic was starting, and we set up a separate VPN system for engineering students, specifically to RDP into those labs because they had unique requirements and kind of a unique situation. We also use Duo. We had Duo two-factor authentication that was actually already in place before the pandemic started, and we really ramped it up for faculty and staff and for student employees. This was only used to access WSU web resources. It was not at this time is not being used to access, Microsoft domain authentication or anything like that.
And that's all we have from WSU.
We'll go ahead and answer any questions at this time.
I guess I can throw something out there. Does anybody have any comments on what they would do, would do differently if it happens again? I know for us, we're, of course, everybody has got everybody else on laptops now, so that's a big push for us. That would have saved us a bit of work, and we have our soft phone thing kind of worked out too. But anything else? Just curious.
It looks like there is a question in the chat. For those of you with Global Protect, do you see any speed issues?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shadi. This is Eric at Washington University. Not with speed with Global Protect, more with bugs in the client, especially on Mac OS. Palo Alto seems to have a lot of trouble with getting it to ask for the system extensions. I'm also responsible for running our Mac fleet when we use Jamf as our MDM. And even though I had everything put in there, all the configuration profiles, several times people had to uninstall and reinstall Palo Alto on their Macs, including some of our Macs, even though I've got it programmed to allow everything automatically. The client just won't connect. So Speed, don't think so, but definitely some bugs in their client.
I think for us was not much speed either. I mean, of course, I'm gonna have, if Ross and Melissa can correct me, for us was kind of like we getting disconnected and then we had to keep reconnect and keep getting kicked out. That was one of our struggle with that. And so, but speed was not an issue for us too much.
And we have Jamf here, and we saw the same issues that you did, Eric, with the Macs not wanting to install that, especially with Palo Alto kind of dragging their heels about getting the client updated for the next Mac OS. That was a real pain for us.
We held Big Sur because of that, and also we've been Sophos for a very long time now, and Sophos was a little bit slow, mainly probably because of the pandemic. But yeah, with the Global Protect, just seems like there's a few bugs there, especially on Mac. And then Shadi mentioned disconnecting. Yeah, so we have that a lot on Windows as well.
We did see several issues when there were updates on the VPN. They would automatically download and install, and then it wouldn't work. And you'd have to reboot and reboot and reboot until it worked, or uninstall, reinstall until it worked. It was very frustrating for several people on our campus.
We experienced that as well. When our network team, system and networking services team, deployed the update through the client, we had instances where some users didn't have administrator on their system. So we decided in future, we are now going to deploy the client through Endpoint Configuration Manager, MECM, because it's going to install it as admin and do all the work behind the scenes. We also do that with Jamf, we push the client, but that was a little inconvenient. Yeah, like you said, Fred, broke it.
I might also follow up on the Global Protect issues, not necessarily Global Protect issue, but with the hotspots. I don't know what hotspots you all use, but we used Sprint and T-Mobile hotspots. We had people that were remote areas, both faculty, staff, and students, or faculty staff that would need a remote or a hotspot, and they were using Global Protect. One day it might work for them. The next day, they couldn't connect at all. They would just keep cycling over and over because the hotspot wasn't getting a good signal in their rural area where they were at. So I think in the future, kind of going to Mike's comment, what we would do in the future if this happens again, probably get some different hotspots that are maybe AT&T, something else that has broader coverage. We still hear about that. We're still loaning those out and still hear from them that they don't work.
Yeah, one of the things that we will definitely do differently next time, and what I mean is, just before the pandemic, several months, we had for the first time leased all of our Windows-based systems. We went with Lenovo. We have been historically and still are heavily a desktop campus. That will definitely change in 2023 when we do our next lease. All faculty staff, at least if this is the plan for now, we will equip them with laptops. Many we have changed over to laptops, but it'll probably be pretty much a standard unless it's a lab or a specialist machine that needs to do computation. You're going to get a laptop and a dock and your dual monitors, because that way it's just lift up and go home, because that was a struggle for all of us, I'm sure. But here at Washburn, we're so desktop heavy, and we definitely need to change that.
I know a hail fire incident here at K-State kind of taught us that laptops were a little bit easier to deal with than desktops, especially when you got to get out of the building because it's burning.
So I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat right now. I think the other sessions did open at 11:40 and we'll get started at 11:45. Like I said, I don't see any other questions in the chat. Are you all ready to wrap up, or do you have more insights, comments, etc. for the audience?
I think we're good.
I'd like to just thank everybody who presented. It's wonderful to hear all of the different things y'all did, how innovative and how quickly everyone was moving. It's amazing to see how wonderful the state of Kansas has all of their IT support people and how quickly we can go. You're all very incredible.
Agree.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone does a great job, as always, all the universities. Have a great rest of your conference.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you, panel. I appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye, everyone.
Well.